Thanks everyone for coming. Um, I think it's good to compartmentalize the seasons as you go through them. So at this point, we've really hit the end of the first quarter of the season, and I had addressed it after the game that I think we've had the toughest starting schedule in the country. So I really just think it's commendable how our players have handled that initial stretch, and how our staff has handled it. And um, I think how they've developed the culture within this program and how our players have embraced the toughness and the attitude that we are going to play with and how hard we're going to play in these games, regardless of who we're playing, where we're playing. So definitely proud of the staff and our team and where we're at right now. I think despite what the record is right now, I think that we're in a really good place mentally, as we approach this next phase of the season. So really proud of the program and our players, obviously, despite what the record shows. Now, as we're moving into this next phase, I think Gardner-Webb is a really good football team. And one of the things that I do think is interesting about them is that the staff has a lot of Ohio ties. And as they've transitioned to that program, they brought in a handful of players from the state of Ohio. I want to say it's around 8 to 10 guys that are within the two deep that are all, born and raised from our state. So I think it's a game that they're going to be excited to play in. And I think there's going to be some guys that are going to play harder because they're having an opportunity to come back home and play in front of their family and in front of their state. So we're excited to have an opportunity to play this game this weekend. And I'm looking forward to family weekend and hope that it brings out a great crowd to Peden Stadium. And, our kids get the support that they got when we played West Virginia. All right. Any questions?
Andrew Bowman, WAB. Coach, you just mentioned the growth that you guys had in the first quarter of the season. How valuable is it to be back? Played three really good opponents in your first three games.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The challenges that come with playing, three Power Four teams all in a row is, the health of your team as you get through that stretch, the morale of your team as you get through that stretch. And I think our guys have done a great job handling all those things where they saw the level that we can play at when we're playing at our best football, and that we can get stops against the best team in the country, that we can create explosive plays against the best team in the country, that we can defend our field against Power Four opponents and win those games at home. So I think that there's a lot of confidence within our program right now of what our potential is, what our ability is. So for us, it's continuing to build off of that. And something that I stressed with our staff was to make sure that we're holding them very accountable as we move into this next phase, and that there is not a letdown as we're through those three Power Four teams.
And then, do you have any injury updates for Parker Navarro, Jack Freeze, or Trent Allen?
Not right now. Parker obviously finished the game and finished playing well. So we're going to kind of see how he's doing day to day. Trent Allen, I'm expecting him to be fine this week. So those are the updates I got for you.
Grant Keeper, WAEB. For you and the team, how does kind of the expectation or just I wouldn't say the mentality is going to change, but just the expectation of, these first three games, you're kind of perceived as the underdog in the next nine. Most of them, if not all of them, you're going to be, kind of perceived as the heavy favorite. It's going to be expected that your team goes out and wins these games.
Yeah, the focus doesn't change. The things that you emphasize are, our culture, our standards, and how we execute. And when you focus a lot more internally and less on who you're playing, regardless of who it is, I think you tend to have better results, and I think the focus stays better.
Chuck with the Post, Coach. You already mentioned Gardner-Webb's a really good team. They've won in a multitude of ways, being Western Carolina and the Citadel. Just what about them sticks out to you as you prepare for them this week?
Yeah, I guess in my role, I tend to watch a lot more of the defense early, just as I'm building that game plan right away. So defensively, they're very aggressive. They pressure quite a bit. I like some of the guys they have on their D line. They're long, athletic. I think that they move well, and they can create some problems that way. Offensively, I like the receiver group they have. They've shown they can make plays downfield and can be real explosive there. I think that they're balanced. There'll be some similarities in terms of how our teams play, in that there is balance within both offensive systems. But when you look at them from last year, I want to say they lost to JMU by a touchdown. They lost to Charlotte by a point. So they've competed at a real high level against Group of 5 opponents. So I'm definitely expecting to get their best.
Cam Robertson with the Athens Messenger coach. You talk about how there's kind of some similarity in the offense between you guys and Gardner-Webb, and I think there is a similarity kind of between Parker and how their quarterback Nate Hampton plays. He has the ability to use his legs. I think he scored 4 touchdowns on the ground for them. So defensively, you guys really haven't gone up against a quarterback this year that's shown a willingness to use his legs in a multitude of situations. How does that kind of change defensively how you guys are going to approach the game this weekend?
Yeah, I don't think it changes a lot of our overall mentality within the game. West Virginia likes to run the quarterback. That was a part of their scheme. So, we did have that aspect of our game plan going into that one.
Hey, Coach Marty Bannister, out of those 3 games, what is the biggest thing you've learned about your football team going into Gardner-Webb?
How much they care about each other. I would say, you go through some challenging times of offense playing well, defense not, defense playing well, offense not. And at no time were there any blaming, pointing fingers, anything like that. I think they've stayed very close. I think you've learned how tough they are as a team, that through all those games, they've always played hard through the entirety of the games and always played physical. And I think that was the things that showed up a lot just this last weekend. One of the guys that I was really proud of was Adonis. I thought he played lights out in that game. And I think he helped himself a ton in his progression, hopefully into the next level. That's going to be a film that scouts are going to look a lot at. And I think he showed very well.
The other thing I think about Saturday, you got a chance to play a lot of different people in that kind of an environment. Mm-hmm. How much of an advantage was that? How much does that help you going down the road?
Great, especially with so many new guys. Defensively, there were some kids that got a chance to play that haven't really gotten into games yet this year, that got some good valuable experience, and we got some offensive linemen in at the end that had not played much in their career here. So I think that it gives them a boost of confidence that they're playing in that environment and against a really high quality opponent.
Coach Owen Lipshew with the Post. You mentioned how motivated you feel Gardner-Webb is going to come into the game Saturday, and it feels sometimes with FBS programs they see FCS games as easy wins. How do you go through practice this week and game prep to make sure your team is just as motivated and ready to win?
Yeah, that was my stress with our staff, of the accountability aspect of, making sure that everything that we're doing is to our standard, that we're doing all the little things the right way. We're really holding them more accountable, maybe than we have been before, or emphasizing things at a higher level. Just to show the urgency of how important those things are. And it's similar to what we've just been going through of us playing Power 4 teams, and I think our guys being extremely motivated to play at a high level against a team with some better resources, or that's known to be from I guess what you would say a higher level of a conference. So it flips the other way. So for us, it's holding them really accountable.
Coach, so far through the first couple of weeks of the season, obviously with injuries to guys like Jack and Casey Seegers, RJ Keekler on the front 6, Jay Crable and Kim Hallbaugh, and other guys have really stepped up big with the depth. Just what can you say about them and how they've looked so far through the first couple of weeks of the season?
Yeah, that's something that I think the longer you're in coaching, that you start to realize is at times the fall off isn't as far as you think it is when guys do go down. And I think if you're doing a great job with your coaching staff of developing your players and that your culture is strong, the next group will rise up and will perform to the challenge. I've been really proud of Jay. him coming a couple years ago as a true freshman and seeing his progression from being a scout team player to what he's able to do right now. I've really enjoyed his growth. And I think Cam did some great stuff during the game. He's obviously played a lot of football, and I think can be hard to block at times. I think he has some savviness to him, which is great. And it's, the more guys that you get opportunities to give quality reps to, the better your depth gets throughout the season, which is great for us.
Not really pertaining to the game at all this week, but it came out last week that you're playing Stonehill's the third game for next year, and there's still one open slot for that non-conference spot. Just what's kind of your philosophy for scheduling that last game and filling out the schedule for next year?
Yeah, ultimately that'll be up to our athletic director. I think that it's important to have balance, that you're looking at how to set up your schedule to be successful. I think there's a financial component to it as well, of how you can set yourself up from an athletic department and to supporting your team. And the thing that's changed that now is with revenue share, and having opportunities to get money from some of these games gives us more opportunities to retain our better players or recruit players with money, which is an important part of the new college football.
And on that note as well, I think Nebraska head coach Matt Rule said something about like he fell out of his chair when he found out they were going to host you guys next year. Just how nice is that for the program to know that there's kind of national attention on what you guys are building here? I
think it's great that there's a level of respect for what our players and our staff has done over years. That the beating West Virginia wasn't the first power program that has lost at Peden, or that OU is beaten on the road. I think there's been a good tradition from the time that Frank Solich first got here of playing competitively against good opponents.
And then just back on the game on Saturday, it felt like Tank Pearson maybe had his best game of the season. He had those two pass breakups in the end zone, denying touchdowns. Just how did you feel he played on Saturday?
I'm sorry, who did you say?
Tank Pearson.
Tank. Yeah, I think Tank elevated a little bit because of the opponent. I think he was very motivated, and like I said before, he was playing against two of the best receivers in the country on the offensive side. So, those guys in the back end had a tall task, and I was excited for his opportunity to be able to compete, and he made some good plays in the end zone. And I thought that was a great reflection of, I think, the respect that our defense has right now when you have a goal line stop early in the game, and then the second time they end up working down there, it's 3rd and 2 from the 2, I think, and they're throwing a goal line fade and then kicking a field goal on 4th down and not trying to pound it in, 2 straight opportunities. So I think that's a great level of respect for what they think of our defense and our ability to stop the run. That was the approach that they decided to take.
Coach, obviously the Grants question, you mentioned the athletic director. Obviously last week Slade was introduced here as a new AD. I know you got the chance to meet him. He was at the game Saturday. Just what are your first impressions of him?
I've enjoyed him for sure. I've had an opportunity to talk with some of the coaches that have been at South Dakota State the last few years, and gotten a lot of very rave reviews about him. And he was the football administrator, so they worked closely with him, and I know that they felt like he was going to be a big loss to their department. So those were very positive things for me to hear.
Coach, looking at the game last week, obviously there's the offensive and defensive units, but something that people don't usually give enough importance to is the special teams. Mm-hmm. You guys are pretty solid in that area. Magnus, especially with his punts, were usually shifting the field and forcing Ohio State kind of back towards their own sideline. What did you kind of think about that unit for you on Saturday?
I thought they improved week by week. And we talked about that after the Rutgers game, just how many new players are playing on special teams, just with the turnover of the program, and that they were going to continue to get better week in and week out. I was definitely proud of Magnus, because I think he grew a lot in these first few games and did a nice job locating his punts and flipping the field for us. And I think our coverage guys are doing a great job too. Kamani DeBro is one that shows up a bunch, who has been a receiver. We've moved him to corner, but the last 2 years has been really a good special teams player and a great coverage player.
Yeah, and then just a second question. I meant to ask this last week, but forgot. Week 1 against Rutgers, you had David handling field goals. Obviously, the last 2 weeks it's been Brack handling the
Yeah.
field goals. What kind of led to that change, and how have you felt about it since that happened?
Yeah, it's just some consistency in practice. Brack, we were fortunate with. He was a walk-on tryout addition and did really well. And we allow them to compete throughout practices. He'd been more consistent, so gave him an opportunity 2 weeks ago, and we'll continue to reevaluate it because obviously he missed an extra point. So those competitions will continue, and we'll keep trying to put out the best one we can. But I thought David did a great job with his kickoffs too. So it's good when guys have roles and they're making the best of those opportunities.